Let me quickly then go through like what we discussed yesterday. A very quick recap of 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll start lab implementation. Yesterday we talked about virtual private cloud VPC, and VPC, as we discussed, like is a virtual or logical space in network infrastructure in the cloud, and very much like the physical infrastructure, like as you put the resources in our own data center. So in AWS, like we have option to create our own virtual private cloud or virtual network. Even virtual private cloud can also be referred as virtual network or VNet. It means creating a physical, not physical, a logical network or a space, a major network in the cloud. And then as per the requirement, we just create different subnets here in the same VPC. Creating different subnets means again, logical division of a network into multiple subnets. And then with the help of routing, we can make maybe one subnet completely like public subnet, another subnet private subnet. Infrastructure or resources placed in public subnets would have internet connectivity, internet accessibility, and EC2 or virtual machines. In the private subnet, by default, they would not have internet connectivity in any direction, no like inbound, no outbound connection. And it's all done. We achieve all this with the help of routing only. And particularly, I'm going to demonstrate all this in today's session, how to make any subnet completely private or how to make any subnet completely public subnet. But yes, like with the help of this custom VPC and different subnets, we can do like full customization. We can create multiple subnets, and then we can ensure like which subnet should have internet accessibility, which subnet will not have internet connectivity or accessibility, can be fully customized. And another point that we discussed yesterday is like when we sign up first time, like in AWS, and so by default, one VPC is created with the name default, and 3 subnets are created. One internet gateway. Internet gateway is like the router to provide internet connectivity. And by default, all 3 subnets that are created in the default VPC, they all are by default public. And even like a CIDR block means like the initial 16 bits, not this one, I'm sorry, 31. So initial 2 octets, that is 16 bits of like this network ID is strictly like 172.31 only. So if we want to use default VPC, we want to use default subnet and default routing and all that. So yes, we can use that. Like, I mean, like we can spin up or launch EC2 in default VPC and in any subnet. But in environment like the production environment or real environments, like we create our own VPC. We never use the default one because default has like predefined IP, like the major network, and then 3 subnets with /20 subnet mask length, and then 3 subnets are public. So most of the time we do not use default subnets. So here like gives you full control over your virtual networking environment. So since we have like option to create VPC in the cloud, it means we would have complete control over the like entire networking environment, like which subnet will be public, private, routing, and some other stuff. Definitely we can control. And even like the placement of resources, whether we want to launch any virtual machine in public subnet, private subnet, what about the connectivity, what about the routing. So we as an administrator like are going to control all that, because we would have full control like on the networking part, at least networking, a bit of security, of course. So but when we create VPC, so we need to start with a major network, assigning a major network address. And major network address means any private IP network with subnet mask length 16 or any high value, high number, I mean like 17, 18, or 19, 20, but not less than 15. We cannot create a VPC with /15 or /14 or /10 subnet mask length. It is restricted. We cannot create a very big network, in fact. And default VPC, as I mentioned, like is a locally isolated virtual network in the cloud that is automatically created. When you, for your AWS account, you can immediately start launching EC2. So quickly, if you want to spin up any EC2, so of course, like default VPC is then at that time very useful, because no need to take care of routing, no need to create subnets or internet gateway, or maybe VPC, nothing, right? Straight away, we can launch EC2, because the default VPC and subnets already like routing and internet gateway, like I mean, like all configuration by default done for us. So we can spin up or launch any EC2. So immediately, if you want to launch or spin up EC2, so yes, you can use default VPC. So for getting started, like if you want to like you want to start like quickly in AWS cloud, so yes, like you can use default VPC. But if you want to or you want to get rid of default VPC, default subnets, default routing table, internet gateway, and all that, so yes, even this default VPC can be created, but deleted. Default VPC can also be deleted, right? But it was deleted, so you cannot bring this default VPC back in the same region, because in each region you will find a default VPC. But once deleted, then yes, you cannot bring it back. So even if like you are not going to use default VPC, and if it is still there in the region, in the account, so no problem with that. You can go ahead and you can create your own VPC, right? So, and custom, as I mentioned, like custom is something like we will have complete control over the IP address range, like the major network address, number of subnets, how many subnets we want to create in the VPC, and whether all subnets should be public, private, or VPN only. So yes, like we will manage, we will control everything in case of custom VPC that we create. Subnet, as I mentioned, like subnet is a small network. Basically, a major network is logically divided into multiple small networks, and a small network is known as subnet, right? And subnet obviously is the subset of your major VPC. VPC is something like, let's say, major network address. So obviously, subnet means a subset of this major network. 10.1.0.0 or whatever like network address we have used in creating VPC. And the subnet like will be private or public is decided with the help of routing, in fact, right? Because at the time of creating subnet, we never get any option to select like from public and private. At least if we are doing configuration completely in custom way, I mean, like even creating VPC in AWS computing or cloud. For that, I mean, like if we want to create a new VPC, so there are two ways to create VPC. One is like VPC console wizard, next kind of thing. So here, yes, like we get a lot of option whether we want to create one public and one private, or only private subnet or only public subnet. But when we follow another way, like we follow like a complete custom configuration, not just like following this VPC console wizard. So here, like as such, we never get option to select public, private, or nothing, right? We just go in very step-by-step configuration, like creating VPC first, and then creating subnets, then internet gateway, routing. And once like infrastructure is ready, you have built your infrastructure in the cloud, then only EC2 instances can be launched or spinned up. right? So before is launching any EC2, infrastructure need to be built. And infrastructure means bare minimum, like creating VPC, subnets, internet gateway, and routing. And then only we can spin up or launch any EC2. So, but console wizard, then yes, like we will have 4 different options: pre-configured template, and we can make our selection, like whether we want a VPC with 2 subnet or VPC with only 1 subnet, and even that subnet public or private. So we can make our selection on that page. And the configuration wise is done in very automated fashion. Automatically, it's all done. I mean, like the routing, internet gateway, most of the configuration automatically done. So again, it's like very user friendly, because if we don't have much knowledge about networking, and step by step configuration, so even we can follow on screen messages, like by just going that way, like VPC console wizard. So easy way of creating VPC and subnets. And public subnet. So public subnet means any subnet. If a subnet traffic is routed to internet gateway, means like subnet that is connected with the internet. Obviously, like from the routing perspective. Private is like completely private, means no internet connectivity. And the third one is VPN only subnet, that is accessible only from the on-premises physical infrastructure with the IPsec site-to-site VPN tunnel. So if the subnet is accessible by using IPsec site-to-site tunnel, so that is known as VPN only subnet. And this one is also important, regardless of the type of subnet. IPv4 address space that we use in the AWS cloud, always private, right? Is always private, no matter whether we are talking about public subnet or private subnet. IPv4 addresses means completely private IPs, right? Private IPs are like means non-routable over the internet, like cannot be routed over the internet. So I hope you all understand, at least like if you all are from networking background, so yes, like very much I'm sure like you all understand private and public IP. However, like if just as a quick recap, maybe you have done networking long back. So in class A, any IP starting from 10, and in class B, IP is starting from 172.16 to 172.31, and IP starting from 192.168. They all are private IPs. They all are defined in request for comment number 1918, RFC 1918, and non-routable over the internet. And non-routable over the internet means any packet that is routed to the internet, if the source or destination IP address from these like address space, so they cannot be routed. It means ISP routers, internet routers, they don't have route to these IPs, and that is why they are known as a non-routable over the internet, right? Non-routable over the internet. They cannot be routed over the internet. So, like any packet like that is being sent to the upstream router or ISP router has source or destination IP from like private IP address space, so routing will never be done then, because they don't know, like basically internet routers, they don't have routing information. They don't know about these IP networks because they are never used over the internet. So so like whether private or public, IPs are always private. And in case if you want public IP, then yes, like we can have IP address provided by the AWS. And if you know you want static public IP, so for that we have elastic IP address option in AWS cloud. So elastic IP means you can you'd have then public IP address, global routable IPs, not free obviously. You will be built like for these IPs, but you can have public IPs in AWS cloud. And if I take a big picture of like this AWS cloud, so let's say if there is any organization and organization has already taken IP address from the internet authorities, right? Public IPs, I'm talking about the public IPs, And internet authorities is something like global. There is one body like INA, Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, and then there are five regional registries. Five regional registries here in India. Like of course, like first we need to understand APNIC like for Asia Pacific, and then here in APNIC there is another organization IRIN. So here in India, if like any company, any organization wants to like go for this dedicated public IP addresses space, so the authority here is IRIN. So the company, organization, or maybe a service provider will have to approach IRIN for public IP address assignment, and after paying a handsome amount of money and just and telling them like why do we need like public IP address space, maybe 200 IPs, 500 public IPs are provided. Of course, not free of cost, like will be charged per yearly. So known as provider independent IP. So most of the companies, especially the large big enterprise networks, they obviously they own like public IPs, right? And why they own, like let me just 5 more minutes I will take, and I think it's very important point, so I must explain here. So let's say and why I'm talking all this, so I'm going to justify that as well, like why I'm talking about this provider independent IPs. So basically public IPs, one public IP is like known as provider dependent. Just forget about the cloud, just is basic networking. Provider dependent, and the type of public IP is provider independent IP. Let me differentiate both provider independent and provider dependent, PD and PI. So what is provider dependent IP? Provider dependent IP is something like it's my enterprise network organization. And let's say I have internet connectivity from this ISP1. Let's say ISP1 is like data communication, TCL, Airtel, or any big telecom provider. So if I take internet lease line from this service provider, and also like the public IP from the same service provider, let's say my requirement is to have maybe 16 public IPs, or maybe 100 public IPs, and all 16 IPs are allocated or provided by the same authority, the same service provider, that is data communication. And this physical link, media, like internet link, is also from the same vendor, right? So we are using 16 IPs here in this network, in maybe the data center, right? In NATing, or maybe assigning to different resources. Now, let's say you want to change your service provider. You are not satisfied with the data communication, and you want to change your service provider, your telco. You want to move to another service provider. So here, like there is a big problem, and problem is what? All 16 IPs gone now, right? Because IPs also provided from the service provider. So if you change the internet like connection, the link, it means again you'll have to take IPs from different provider. So what will happen to the resources or infrastructure already published or accessible over the internet with these IPs address? So you need to update everywhere. I mean, like if I have a web server, and like in DNS, there is entry, like entry of domain name with the IP, with this IP address, and now IP is changed all of a sudden. So I need to update DNS record, and updating DNS record may take like an hour or maybe more than that, right? And it's your public web server, like accessible from like anywhere, I mean, like by internet users. So obviously a big enterprise network cannot afford like to change IPs, right? So no matter whether service provider link is different or same, at least organization or company would be interested in like using or retaining same IPs. So what is the way, like if like I mean, like if we don't take IP from the same service provider which is providing internet connectivity, so what is alternate option? What is another way? So another way is like just approaching the internet authority for public IP addresses, right? Because service provider, they also obtain public IPs from these authorities only, like the global body INA, and then 5 regional registries, right? for American region, and then AfriNet for Africa, for Australia, APNIC, and for European. There is another regional registries, and then under the regional registries, like here in Asia Pacific Network Information Center, country specific like internet authorities. So they also obtain public IPs from these authority only. So why not like organization just approach the same authority? Yes, very much possible. This company ABC, a big company, yes, can go to this APNIC or maybe IRIN to have public IPs. Obviously, these authorities like regional or like country-specific authorities, they will never provide 1, 2, or 4 IP. But let's say it's a big enterprise network and looking for 254 or 200 public IPs. So yes, like you can have IPs provided from these authorities only. And what about the physical link? Physical link, you can take from any service provider, maybe Tata or Airtel or Reliance or any like service provider. So in case even if you change your service provider, you want to shift to another service provider. So what would happen? Obviously, like the link will get changed, the physical media, maybe this interface IP, but 250 IPs, no, you will retain like the IPs. I mean, like you are still using the same IPs because your IP or you are not dependent on the service provider, technically known as provider independent, right? It means you are not dependent on the service provider. Now here, now let's say now the next step is this organization company now decided to move infrastructure from on-prem to cloud AWS cloud now. And the last one big organization, this company owns like a public IP address space, let's say this one, right? /24 public IP address. So servers and other resources now like moved or like about to move to the cloud. It's like migration is in progress. You want to use your own IP, right? Even in cloud, we have option like elastic IP address, right? AWS will provide public IP address from the available range or pool, right? But we don't want to change, like we don't want to use AWS assigned IP. We want to use the same IP, right? Because already IPs are in the public domain and in DNS database and everywhere like populated. So you don't want to start all over again. I mean, like, because even it takes time, you know, like DNS, synchronization and reflecting changes everywhere. In past, in fact, making any change in the DNS database, like if I take if I go like 6 or 7 years back, so even the maximum time at that time was like 24 hours. It means like if you have made any change in the DNS record database, like this name now, like let's say abc.com initially points to 1.1.1, and now you change like that this abc.com should resolve to 222, right? So in past, like good amount of time like in reflecting I mean like synchronizing this database with all the internet based DNS server, public DNS server. Nowadays of course like time is very much reduced now, but still this may take like an hour or so. So you want to retain, like you want to use the same IP address. So will that be possible? Yes, that is also possible, right? A pool need to be created here. Even AWS team will ask like for some documents, like a proof, like you'll have to submit some proof that yes, you own like this IP address space. And then AWS network team, what they do or they will do, they will advertise your public IP address space in routing. I mean like by using this border gateway protocol to make this IP routable globally. So even like if we have moved infrastructure from on-premises to the AWS cloud, but we want to use our own public IP address, that is also possible. That is also possible. We can do that, provided like we like own like IPs, own like I mean like IPs taken on lease basically, because we don't buy anything over the internet. So domain name IPs, no, we never buy. We take like IPs or we register domain name for a specific time or period, maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. So that is also possible. But here, like obviously, for a small organization or for any organization like no public IP. So obviously like in case if public IP is required, then we will ask AWS to provide public IP from AWS range of IP only. So, and we will be doing the same, obviously. But here in private and public, all IPs are private. All IPs are private, no public IP concept here. Sizing wise, we discussed like in AWS, like first IP reserved network address. This is internal router, internal DNS server for future. And last one is broadcast address. So in any given subnet, you cannot use like these 5 IPs. So if like a subnet has total 256 IPs, so we then subtract 5. So 5 means like total 251 usable IP. For subnet has like total 4096 IPs. So usable IPs will be 4091 only. We need to subtract 5 from each subnet because of reservation. 5 IPs are reserved. Internet gateway, you can assume internet gateway as your is a router to provide internet connectivity. So it's your virtual network VPC. It is gateway. Our internet gateway is just to provide internet connectivity, right? And how we like attach this internet gateway with this virtual network, I'm critically going to show you. It's very easy, like it's not very complex. Routing table, again, I'm critically going to show you. So I think then you will be in a position to understand properly. And how to create a VPC. So this like on-screen wizard, there are 4 options. So I'm going to show you critically, then I think will be much more better. So let's not discuss here. So directly now I'm going to this AWS management console, right? So here like in AWS management console, and if you want to access VPC dashboard, so you can use search option here. You can go to the VPC, right? And if already you have added here as a favorite, then you can click here also VPC. So I'm going to start from the scratch, from the very beginning, step by step. But before I just go ahead and create VPC, subnet, internet gateway, and routing, let me quickly show you like the default like VPC here. So there is one VPC, and this VPC is default and the automatically created, right? 172.31.0.0, and it's a default VPC. And here like there are 3 subnets. So you can see like there are 3 subnets with different mask length /20. There is one routing table. By default, only one routing table is created, and all 3 subnets are associated with this routing table, and one internet gateway. It's all done automatically, right? And in each region, so even if I change the region from Mumbai to Singapore, then again there like I will find one default VPC. Subnets may vary like from region to region, because in Mumbai region, why there are 3 subnets? Because there are 3 availability zone, and each subnet, like subnet 1 is in maybe in zone AZ1, then another maybe in AZ2, AZ3 or so. So subnets are in different availability zone, and you can see from here is AZ3. Then if I select this one, then AZ1, then this one maybe AZ2, right? So AZ2. So 3 subnets because there are 3 availability zone. If I change the region, maybe if I go to US East, then there I might find 6 or 7 subnets, right? Because in US East there are 6 availability zones. Routing table, but again like only one routing table and one internet gateway. It's all default in fact, right? But I don't want to use this default one. So let's say if completely I want to create VPC, subnets, internet gateway, everything like in very customized way. So let me write it down. So step by step how we can proceed here in AWS cloud. So if I talk about like this step by step configuration, configuration means like a network configuration, obviously building network infrastructure. So first step obviously is creating subnet, VPC. So when we create a VPC, so bare minimum like name is required. For example, let's say if I give the name like NetTech VPC, or VPC1, or VPC2, anything like, right? Whatever you like, VPC1. And then CIDR, network address. Okay, so for example, network address, this one, /16, done, very easy. And then step 2. Step 2 is creating subnets. And then subnet again here, like name, obviously name here, like the subnet name, you can give any name. right? Public, private, or subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3. You can give any name here. Let's say you said subnet 1, or maybe this way, like subnet, or maybe just like this, public subnet. And you can also
Are
use.
these subnets same as like VLAN? For example, can we name the subnet as like user VLAN or something like that? Or
Yes, like very
marketing VLAN and finance VLAN and something like that?
exactly, very similar to that. However, VLANs are basically mainly used for layer 2 segmentation. Layer 2 means layer 2 virtual networks, whereas subnets are again like segmentation, obviously network segmentation, but subnets means like layer 3 segmentation, layer 3 segmentation. So yes, we can understand that way also. That subnet name is very similar to the VLAN name, but with one difference, that VLANs are used for layer 2 segmentation, and networks for layer 3 segmentation, means creating different networks like with the help of IP addresses or IP networks. Whereas in VLANs, like we do segmentation on the behalf of like VLANs and port assignment and all that. But yes, very similar to the VLAN name, and it's just the name. You can give any name. Even if I say public subnet, so doesn't mean like the subnet will become public. No, it's just the name. So
Yeah.
you can give any name, right? You understand, right? So let's say I said subnet 1 or any subnet, and then you also selected this VPC. Obviously, I want to create this in any VPC, same network VPC or VPC1, and actual subnet address, right? So this subnet address, first subnet maybe /24. So this way we can create multiple subnets, another subnet, 3, 4, 5 subnets as per the requirement. So I will start with only one subnet first. So one VPC and one subnet, and then like step by step we will increase number of subnets. So let's say I created just only one subnet. What next now? Next is, this subnet is still not public subnet, obviously, because next is, so far like we have created a VPC, and in this VPC there is only one subnet, only one subnet for now, subnet 1, right? We have space to create more subnets, and we'll be doing that later on, but initially I want to start with only one subnet. Now I want to make this subnet public subnet. So for that there has to be an internet gateway, like is router, to provide internet connectivity, and this internet gateway is attached with the VPC, not with any subnet, not with any subnet. Okay, so the next step is create internet gateway, and attach, don't forget to attach with this VPC that we created in step number 1, right? It means now we have bought or purchased internet connection for this major network. So internet gateway is something like is device. What next now? Next one is like routing, right? Routing means create a default static route, right, to provide internet connectivity for internet access. And where we do this like default static route in the routing table. So basically what happens when we create VPC, a routing table is automatically created, right? Main routing table automatically created. Even we can create additional routing table, and even I'm going to show you that also. But as I said, like I want to start from like step by step. I want to go. I want to start from very beginning. So main routing table, and here like since there is only one subnet, and by default subnet is associated with this routing table. It means subnet will use this routing table for routing. So in this routing table, if I go there like and select the edit routes, just to edit the routing table. So by default, I will like find one route here by default, right? This one. default created. It means local network and major network. So now here we need to add one route here in the routing table 000/0, and then here target my internet gateway. Let's say my internet gateway name here. Let's say I have given internet gateway a name IGW VPC1, right? You should always give a meaningful name to your resources in AWS cloud, because by default a unique ID is generated and we cannot identify any object or resource with the ID. Not easy to remember, so it's always best practice to give a meaningful tag or name so that we can easily identify the object. So now here like target is this internet gateway VPC1. So step number 4 now completed. And what next now? Infrastructure is ready now. Infrastructure is ready, right? So because I first created VPC and its complete custom VPC creation, I will show you that on screen VPC console wizard also, like next. But let me start with this first, right? Easy to understand. So basically first step, we created a major network, like a rack, network rack, or major network, or logical space in the cloud, or virtual network in the cloud. That's what VPC is. Then only one subnet here, subnet 1, and subnet 1 address is 10.1.1.0/24. And then internet gateway. Internet gateway is attached here with the VPC, and the complete network is VPC and is connected to internet. By default, a routing table is created, a routing table, main routing table, and here we obviously will find only one route, and this route is for this VPC, not for a specific subnet, a major network, local routing table. So what we did then, we created a default route here in this routing table, and the target is internet gateway. We want to route traffic via internet gateway. And this subnet 1, like this routing table means subnet 1 is associated with this routing table, subnet 1. So this routing table is for subnet 1. Now, if any resource or EC2 or virtual machine is launched here in this subnet now, right? And this EC2 machine can have any IP address assigned from the same range, this range. And obviously, like 5 IPs are excluded, 0, 1, 2, 3, and the last IP. And by default, static IP, private IP is like provided from the DHCP server. It means this EC2 instance obtains IP address from the DHCP server, and DHCP server is still like running internally in the AWS cloud. If we want that this Windows machine or EC2 or Linux machine should have a static private IP, yes, that is possible. Let's say I want to assign 15 IP address. Now, EC2 launched in this subnet is obviously now can be accessed from the internet side. This EC2 instance will also have internet access in outbound direction, because subnet itself is a public subnet. And what do I mean by public subnet? Public subnet means let's say this EC2 instance like wants to communicate with 888 or cisco.com. So packet is the destination IP address will be checked here in the routing table. Is there any route for destination IP address? And yes, there is one default route. Default is something like any network address, no matter what the destination is. So any network address, any subnet mask, and the target or next hop is internet gateway. So this way, packet is routed to the internet gateway, and internet gateway is connected with the internet. We don't have to do like for this, all this is already done by default. So this way, yes, like EC2 can reach to the internet, and even like connection coming from internet should be obviously like successfully routed to EC2 instance, provided there is no restriction from the firewall, there is no restriction from your security group, or there is no restriction from the access control list, right? So if I assume that there is no restriction from the firewall or access list, so any EC2 instance that is hosted, launched in the public subnet means literally like public, means like both direction internet access from outbound incoming traffic and as well as outgoing traffic. And we want to do this verification first, and then I will go ahead and I will create another subnet. I will make that subnet completely private, and we will then do again verification. But first thing first, in the first, I want to just create a VPC, one subnet, internet gateway, default static route, bare minimum, like we have created a complete infrastructure in the cloud, and then we can go ahead and we can like launch any EC2 in the subnet. Obviously, there is only one subnet, so no choice, right? And when we create subnet, so I must mention here, then here also there is one option to select the zone, like in which zone you want to create this subnet, right? So you can make your selection here, whether you want like 1A or 1B or 1C, like, so you can make your selection here at the time of creating subnet. Because when we spin up a launch EC2, there like we only select VPC and subnet, no availability zone, right? We don't get the option to select availability zone there. And even I've seen that once like your subnet is created, and let's say you at that time you didn't pay attention, you have not selected proper availability zone, and accidentally all subnets created in the same zone. However, there is no problem. But let's say you want like that one subnet should be in one availability zone, another subnet in different, and the third one is third zone. So as so there is no way to do the editing. Like once object is created, so maybe like if they have some added functionality, so I'll check that. Otherwise, no way to like edit this subnet object. And now think like, let's say subnet is created and you have launched 2 or 3 EC2, means Windows server. Later on, you realize that all subnets are in the same availability zone. Now you want to change the zone, like you want to edit. So I think as of now, there is no way, like once like subnet is created, so we cannot change the availability zone. Then the only way is like deleting a subnet completely and then creating all over again. So something like we need to be very careful at the time of creating subnet, and especially when we will talk about this, like ELB, load balancer, ELB, application load balancer. And here like there are EC2 instances or virtual machines behind this load balancer, right, for like traffic distribution. So if like all 3 virtual machines or EC2 instances are in the same subnet, so we cannot spin up even like ELB EC2, because it's again a EC2 kind of thing, ELB elastic load balancer. It means here like the prerequisite is minimum 2 subnets, minimum 2 subnets. So if you're even there are 5 servers or 10 servers, but they all are in the same subnet, means same availability zone, right? So like you won't be able to then configure this properly, right? Why? Because minimum 2 subnets are required, and 2 subnets in 2 different availability zone. So best practice is always like selecting proper zone here at the time of creating subnet. So you must pay attention at the time of creating subnet, because once created, you have launched EC2 in this subnet. So like editing is not allowed here, right? You cannot edit. I mean, like you cannot change zone later on. That is why. So once like we have completed these 4 steps, so we can easily spin up any EC2. So first I'm going to show like all these 4 steps, and then I will go ahead and create additional 2 or 3 more subnets, and then I'll talk about private and other subnet. However, this subnet purely is I want to make this subnet as public subnet, public subnet.
So can you share these the notes that you just created?
Sure, I will put it here in the chat window if you want. So because this networking part and literally is very important, going like step by step, and because in like at least for beginners like who are very new to this AWS cloud, so for those at least going step by step is strongly recommended. Because in single step, if you like you are going to create multiple subnets, private, public, NAT gateway, and then routing, then security group, ACL. So will create confusion. Obviously, you'll be doing all this, but like after completion of I think one or two more slide, at least security group and ACL and all that. So definitely then you will be in a position to do like all like security group, ACL and a NAT and internet gateway in single go. I mean, like you can do everything with single click or maybe few clicks. But initially you should always follow a step by step. So how to now create new VPC? I'm not going to use default. So select your VPCs from left hand side, like virtual private cloud. And I'm going to click here. So selection is your VPC. And I'm in the VPC dashboard, right? And now I want to click here, create VPC. Okay. I'm not going to use this VPC dashboard. Dashboard means like VPC console wizard. No, I'm not going to use. So now I'll be showing like all the four options here, like what we get on this page, like dashboard. I mean, like this console wizard. But first, I want to start from here only. So click here, create VPC. So a screen here, like to create a VPC, and bare minimum you need to even optional, but definitely you should give a name here. So let's say I say like it's my first VPC. So VPC1 is just the name. And I want to go with the IPv4 CIDR format only. And here is the IPv4 address, major network address, and /16 I'm going to use. Tenancy also I'm selecting default, like default means like not dedicated or shared, because dedicated means like you will be charged more than. So just creating VPC is very straightforward, just like name and the CIDR block, no IPv6 obviously, and then just create. What I did, I just created a VPC, right? VPC ID is generated here, and all that about this DSCP option set and all that. Associate and the main routing table is created immediately. Even access list is created. The next class will be all about access list and security group. So I will talk about access list in detail. But access list is also created, right? And routing table is created. So if I go here, routing table, so and let me adjust this, because this routing table, there are two routing table, right? This one and another one is 9A00. So one routing table associated with default and another routing table with this VPC1 that I created, right? There are two like routing table. So if you want to check like the routing table for VPC1, so see here, VPC1. So this routing table ID, like automatically generated ID, is like is mapping routing table associated with VPC1, right? And this one is for the default like already created. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to just give a name here, a tag, and VPC1 routing table, so that I can easily identify that yes, this is my VPC1 routing table. So VPC, at the time of creating VPC, one routing table is automatically created, right? What about subnets? No subnet. 3 subnets, they all are default subnets, right? 409.1 level IPs. Subnets are not created by default, only VPC routing table. What about internet gateway? There's only one internet gateway and it is already attached with default VPC. It is attached, internet gateway is attached with this VPC ID. This is the default VPC ID, right? Default VPC ID. So internet gateway not created automatically. Routing table, yes, created. And what route this routing table has, so let me show you that also. So I selected VPC1 routing table and the next option routes. And if I click edit routes, so I see here only one route, right? Automatically created. Destination 10.1.1.0.0/16, a major network address, and target is local, and status is active. And the status here is black hole, very dangerous. I will explain that later on, like what is black hole status means in the routing table, and what does this like option mean, like propagated. So I will explain these two options later on, maybe in the transit gateway section. All right, so as there is no default route, only a measure network route. And again, if I go back to the same VPC, I'm sorry, VPC dashboard, I'm back to this. So can we like see this ACL also, the access list automatically created? And yes, there is one access list, this one created automatically. Okay, and but no subnet is associated, obviously, because as there is no subnet, even only VPC is created. So conclusion is, when we create new VPC, a route table is created and access control list is created. Subnets, internet gateways, no, they are not created by default. So what next? Like next step is creating subnets. Creating subnets, step number 2. Left hand side, just like below this VPCs, subnet option is there. Right corner, create subnet. And on this page, first you will have to select the VPC, in which VPC you want to create your subnet. Obviously in VPC 1. This one is default, right? We're not using, even we can get rid of like default VPC subnet and all that. But no problem, even if they remain like in your account, so no problem with that, because you will not be charged for that. Even you will not be charged for this VPC also. So create subnet in this VPC. So what I did, I selected my VPC 1, right? And VPC CIDR black is here. What about the subnet address now? So, and the first subnet, right? Name. So name, like let's say I said is my first subnet, so subnet 1, and just for better naming convention, I'm going to type here 10.1.1.0 so that I can easily identify that subnet 1 means like the network address is 10.1.1.0. Even I can specify -24 because slash is not allowed like from this naming convention, so I can use this, or just I can write public subnet or maybe private subnet, right? So like it's just the name, you can give any name. And then here, like this one is really important, availability zone, right? Choose the zone in which your subnet will reside. Let Amazon choose one for you, right? No preference. So no preference means like you don't know like whether this subnet will be created in 1A, B, or C. So I'm going to select 1A, right? Asia Pacific South 1A. And then here is the IPv4 address range. And this address obviously is subset of your VPC, this one. So you can use any subnet address, but from this major network only. So make sure that your subnet is from the same range. So initial 2 octets should be same, should match, right? 10.1 only. Third octet, I can take 1/0/24. It means total 256 IPs, but 5 IPs are not usable. It means 251 usable IP. And the tag name, again, if you want, then you can give here again already a name is given here, tag, like the key means like name and the name value is this. However, it's optional. So on the same page, we have option to create additional subnets, right? So in case if you want to create 5 subnets in one go, no need to click here, create subnet. Just click add a new subnet here on the same page, okay, this way, and then subnet 2 of 2. Fill out like all the like mandatory information on the page, and then if you want to create another, then click here, add new subnet. So this way you can create multiple subnets. You can create multiple subnets, right? On the same page, you can remove or create, but I want to create, oh shit, we have removed this only. Anyway, I need to type one more time. All right. So accidentally, I removed this one. In fact, subnet 1 itself. I thought of like I was deleting subnet 2. 10.1.1.0/24. Okay. So just like hit here like create subnet, and the subnet is getting created and created successfully. So there is only one subnet.
So one question here.
Yes, sure.
So the tag that it says, which is optional, so like, does it have any relevance? Like, is it just a description or
Yes,
it's
yes, it's just a description, because internally, like auto-generated IDs are used. Like whenever we create any object in the AWS cloud, then automatically a resource ID is generated. So for internal purpose, AWS always uses auto-generated IDs, not the name, because tag is something like the name to identify the object. It is only for the administrator. It is only for us. So yes, like it's like description kind of thing. And even if you look at the like these three subnets, so they don't have any tag, right? It's all
yeah.
blank. So yes, like it's like optional, and it's just description. So you can skip like giving any tag or name. But as a best practice, you should always assign a name, because in case if you have multiple objects in your account, so will be really very difficult to identify those objects. So better like if you give a meaningful name as
So
a
name
tag.
and tag is same, like where it says.
Exactly. Name is something like is a like key, and the value is this. So name and value pair. So key is like the name, and then the field is like this value. What is
Okay.
the name? Then the value is name. So that's what like the tag means, like key, name, and value field.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
So Anjali, you can compare it with the CIDR block we are creating in info blocks, and then we are just putting the description for
Okay.
that.
Okay. Cool.
So
Exactly.
if we go to tags, should we see name there as one of the tags in the tags
Where?
field? At the bottom, if you see on our right side,
Okay. Here. Okay. Okay.
yep, should we see name as one of the tags?
Yes, like here it is showing
Yep.
like the key is like name, and then value is this.
Okay.
So yes, like it is relevant for identifying objects. So definitely. So now if I go to the next step, so next step is what? Next step is creating internet gateway. So still like there is no route for internet. So now the next one is create internet gateway. And then I will be editing routing table, because without creating and attaching internet gateway, I cannot create default static route with the target internet gateway. So click here, create internet gateway, and again I'm giving a meaningful name here, and so that I can easily identify this internet gateway is attached with VPC1. And as we discussed in yesterday lecture, that there is one-to-one relationship between VPC and the internet gateway. So one internet gateway only can be attached with only one VPC, and one VPC can have only one internet gateway attached. So just the name, and that's it. Like gateway is created, and here on the right corner, you can see like it's like just there is option to attach this gateway, internet gateway with the VPC, right? So if I click here, like I want to attach this gateway with a VPC, so I will not have both VPCs here like available. No, only one VPC, right? Because default VPC has already one internet gateway attached. That is why there is only one option here, that is VPC1. Only because this VPC1 is still doesn't have any internet gateway associated. That is why. So now its internet gateway is attached with it. So very much we are on the right track, right path. And the last step is like creating a default static route in the routing table. So if again I go to this routing table, so we are just like moving here only in this portion only, 4 options. Your VPC, subnets, route table, and internet gateway. So now I need to select the this routing table, VPC1 routing table, because I don't want to do anything in the default routing table. And first, like I want to show you like the subnet association. So even like there's only one subnet, there is only one routing table. So even if you do or you do association or not, but already it is associated, right? Even if you don't do this way association, no worries, like still it is associated. It like the it means no association means like using main routing table only, right? So this step was really not required because only one routing table, one subnet. So even you don't have to do the association, but creating route, yes, it is required. So just select edit route, and add and put a default route here, any network, any subnet mask, and then target here. You will say like a lot of option here, but for now we are interested only in internet gateway. NAT gateway, yes, I'll be using later on in upcoming lectures. In network interface, maybe in like where I will be launching EC2 from the marketplace, like the Palo Alto or any firewall. So at that time, I will show you like creating route with the network interface peering connection. Yes, again, I'll be using this in VPC peering section, transit gateway, also virtual gateway, yes, in the VPN section. So most of the options we are going to cover. But for this lab, internet gateway, and now here see the name along with the ID. So I can easily select this gateway and save changes. Now routing is created and don't want to run any analyzer and all that. So there is one VPC, one subnet, one internet gateway, and default route. Now I can like launch EC2 in this network and in this subnet, obviously. Neuro has put some information here, and yes, like tags are very handy in daily operations and automation. We can add multiple tags to a resource and use them to filter or group up. Yes, for that purpose also you can use like for searching or filtering or anywhere, like you can use that. So yes, like day-to-day operation tags, and even like in identifying objects, like if for identification purpose also, tags are very important. So now I want to spin up EC2, any Windows or Linux machine, no problem. So if I go to this instance option, and initially I'm just starting with this Windows server one more time, because in order to spin up Linux or maybe Palo Alto or any other appliance, I'll have to discuss another point, that is generating PPK from PEM file, and for that we will use this putty key generator, right? So putty key generator. So I think I have like this software installed, and yes, putty is in this one. So with the help of this, like we generate some PPK file. So I'll explain later on. So I don't want to just go out of track. So I want to be very much focused on this lab only. So that is why I'm going to just select a Windows machine one more time. And but maybe in the next session, I will be using Linux or some other EC2 from this page. But quickly, I want to launch, and here on this page, I don't want to make any selection. But here on this page now, I do not want to spin up Windows EC2 in the default VPC. No, I want to launch this EC2 in VPC1. So now I have option to select VPC1, right? Since there is only one subnet, so I don't see like option here, multiple options, because there is only one subnet. But in case if there have been like 3, 4, 5 subnets, so definitely would have an option here like for making our selection. So select subnet 1, and only 251 IPs available. Yes, we know that because 5 IPs are reserved. Auto assign public IP. Yes, I'm interested in that. Public IP address need to be assigned. And then if I also want to give a static private IP address so that I can easily remember. And then storage on this page, I don't want to do anything. And again, here I want to give a tag like the name key pair, and the name here is I want to give here Windows 2019, and this is in my public subnet. So it is my in public subnet. All right.
With the IP address,
Okay. Yes.
Can it be assigned via DHCP, or do you have to assign manually?
The option that I selected here on this page, like auto assign IP and then enable, means like DHCP assigned public IP address. But private IP address is not DHCP assigned, because I assigned like private IP manually, that is 10.1.1.15. So in this case, public IP address will be assigned automatically from the DHCP server, but not the private. Private is static IP. So whenever I'll be running this EC2 instance, like on off or whatever, like how many times we are doing, no matter, private IP address will remain same, that is 10.1.1.15. But private IP, public IP, yes, will get changed every time. Like I mean, like if your EC2 is stopped and then again started, maybe different IP address next time. So if
But
you
is it
want to
possible
assign,
to have DHCP for private IP as well, or private IP is
exactly.
always manual?
Yes, even private IPs, obviously by default, even like private IPs are assigned from the DHCP server only. So if I go to the previous page, if I don't say here anything on this page, if I leave this field blank where it has gone, this one, it means private IP address assigned to this ETH 0. And by default, there is only one network card, right? I've seen like in the organizations in the real industries, and I will take one or two scenarios wherein like even Windows machines like using multiple network cards, right? One network card to connect to one network, another network card to connect to different network. So that is possible. Even later on, I will show you how to add additional ENI. ENI is your elastic network interface card, like your LAN card, very similar to that. So yes, you might like require that. Like of course, it's not in this training, but in production network, like because I've seen like people using multiple network cards, even like for Windows machine, even like connecting to two different infrastructures. So you might need that. But how to add multiple network interfaces, even like once like your instance is successfully launched, is pinned up, later on, let's say you want to attach another network card, that is possible. I will show you later on how to do that. So yes, like I selected here IP address means private IP address static. If I just delete, I do not like assign any IP here, I don't put any value here, it means private IP address is assigned from the DHCP server, obviously.
Okay.
Right. So now after the tag security group, let's say I don't want to be restrictive for now, like we haven't talked about security group. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just say like permit. Obviously in production network, we will never do this, but because we don't want to be, like get into like these stuff for now. And from anywhere, like all like incoming connections allowed. If even is giving a warning message that what we are doing like is something blunder, like rules with source IP any allow all IP addresses to access your instance. We recommend setting security group rules to allow access from known IP address. We understand that it's not a production network, so I can afford to have. And then I'm going to use like the same. I think we have the same key pair because yes, 23rd Feb we created on that day. So yes, now I acknowledge. So I don't want to. We don't have to create another key pair. We can spin up EC2 instance here. So it's a public and view instance, and once it is successfully like initialized running, then yes, like we can access this Windows machine with its public IP address, and public IP address is like DHCP assigned, and private IP address the same 10.1.1.15, and this one is public IP address, right? So we
But that
can
public
launch
IP
now.
address is of the internet gateway, right? Not for this instance.
Technically, it is basically what happens in cloud. Basically, when we provide public IP address, so basically IP address is provided to the EC2 only, and automatically behind the scene, one-to-one NATing is done. 1:1 NATing is done. Static NAT kind of thing means this public IP address is automatically mapped with the private IP address. There is 1:1 mapping. It means if the computer like this machine, EC2 machine, like is routing traffic over the internet, sending packet to the internet, so source IP address will be translated with the 15.206, and if traffic coming from internet side like hitting this public IP address, then translated to this IP address. And IP address is basically not assigned to internet gateway, it is assigned to the EC2 in fact. So if it means if you have 5 servers, it means there will be 5 different IPs, right? Public IPs. If you have 5 Windows server, means 5 different public IPs, right? They all are using its own IP address, but behind the scene, yes, is like it's getting done in very automated fashion, 1:1 NATing, and that is why your security group has to be very restrictive, because 1:1 NATing is not a secure NAT. Whenever we say like static NAT, it is not secure because static NAT is something bidirectional, right? So in networking, we never assume static NAT or any other NAT as a secure NAT because it is bidirectional. Whereas when we configure just a source NAT, Sometimes it is also known as secure NAT, or maybe you can call it source NAT. And why it is secure NAT? Because in this NATing, what happens? Let's say here is my router or firewall connected to internet, my LAN segment, computers here on the LAN segment. And in case of source NAT, like translating source IP address with the exit interface or egress interface IP address is secure, obviously, because if someone from internet site is initiating connection, the first packet, request packet, it is never allowed because it is never translated. It's not 1:1 or it's not bidirectional. It means the request packet, the first packet, must be originated by internal clients only, this way only. Yes, reply packet is allowed because NAT is also stateful. So if request packet is allowed, then reply packet will be allowed. But this packet is the reply packet. So source NAT, it means like just translating source IP address. Source IP address translating is yes secure, and source doesn't get exposed. So source.
So I'm just saying that
in
it
what?
is source net. So because of that, it won't get exposed, and outside network never be able to initiate the request.
That the second point is more relevant, yes, because in source, yeah, secure NAT, yes, like more relevant. The next one, as you said, that internet users, yes, like they would never be able to initiate connection to the like resources or server or machines here, because source NAT or SNAT is only like is allowed only if the first packet, request packet, initiated or requested from internal computer only, right? Make sense? So yes, like here, but what we are doing here is something very risky, right? Why it is risky? Because this server, Windows machine server, no, you understand, like it is exposed to the internet, even though it has a private IP address, a public IP address, right? And with the help of internet gateway, connected to internet now, and the whole, if like anyone like knows the IP, public IP address, right? This one, it means connection can be initiated from internet side, and that will hit the machine, right? Even if here, like if there is any personal firewall or some Windows firewall, so maybe you can restrict that traffic, but at least traffic is hitting your Windows machine, your server machine. So there can be some kind of denial of distributed denial of service attack, some other attack, buffer overflow, because unknown users, unknown request packets are hitting your firewall, your computer machine, because like this public IP is mapped with this private IP. So very much like this IP destination IP translated to this IP address. So yes, it is very risky affair, and that is why what you need to do, you need to stop like internet requests before reaching this Windows machine, right? So you need to stop somewhere here, maybe internet gateway. Here is like your EC2. So what we need to do, we need to stop like internet requests, like not relevant, obviously, like attack kind of thing, before hitting this Windows machine here. I mean, like, and can be your security group, even like a virtual firewall, right? So if here like you have a strict condition, so request will hit security group after translation, but here it will be blocked here, because the flow is something. If I just quickly, if I give you just sorry, not this way. And even I'm going to show you that also, and because we still have good time, like enough time to discuss. So let's say there is one machine here, EC2, like Windows machine. So like if we initiate any traffic from this Windows machine, let's say this Windows machine is in Subnet 1, right? And there is another machine, for example, in Subnet 2, and we are going to spin up another machine very soon in Subnet 2. Here it's under EC2, maybe Windows machine 2, Windows Server 2, and Windows Server 1. So when we initiate traffic from Windows Server, so it first goes to the LAN card, that is your elastic network interface, and then immediately after this elastic network interface means first EC2, then elastic network interface, and then this virtual firewall. Security group, that is a virtual firewall, and a security group is to protect EC2, your EC2, right, in both the direction, in and out, and then your access control list. This ACL is because for this entire network, in fact, right, tied with the network, whereas security group is just to protect your EC2, individual EC2, and then a routing table is checked, and then again it enters another ACL. Here, like the ACL is not the first point of defense now, a first point of defense for this, and here like not the first point, and then again security group tied with this EC2, and then finally will hit the EC2, destination hit EC2. This one is, let's say, destination, and this one is source. So within the same cloud, if there are two subnets and we want like communication between both the subnets, maybe privately with the private IP address, then still you can use like a security group, access list, and all that, because this is the complete flow, how it goes. And I'm going to demonstrate this also. So my point is, if you have assigned public IP address to the EC2, so make sure that your security group is very restrictive. If you're not using any external firewall, so make sure your security group doesn't have like this, I mean, like there are two pages. Okay, let me close one. Unnecessary is creating confusion. Okay, so your security group should be very restrictive. And what we did here, we created a security group like source, any destination, any service, any allow. So, and why it is risky? Because EC2 is in public subnet, and public subnet means exposed to the internet. So yes, it is very risky. So let's quickly access this machine first, and then we will go ahead and launch another one. So let me copy, and because my objective is to create another subnet and make that subnet completely private subnet, not a public subnet. And but access this machine first. And what about the password? So we need to obtain the password. So connect RDP client, username we understand, and then get the password. Browse to the location where we have saved the this file, PIM file, and then decrypt password. Where is the password? Here we go. Password. Administrator is the username, and then password. Okay. So now this machine is accessible, and this Windows machine definitely will have both like outbound internet connection and as well as internet incoming internet. Of course, incoming is there, and that is why we have got this RDP access. Outgoing internet connectivity will also be there. All right, so I'm going to minimize this window, because my objective is to go ahead and create another subnet. But another subnet, I want to make another subnet completely private subnets, right? So not the public. So now I don't have to repeat this step number 1. I don't have to do this internet gateway, but routing wise, yes, I need to do some manipulation in routing, because the next subnet I want to create private subnet, right? So click here, subnets, and already one subnet, and now I'm going to give this subnet a name as public subnet, so that we can understand, and instead of this this way, public subnet 1, so will be more relevant. And then the next subnet I'm going to create as private subnet, private subnet, and 10.1.2.0 different subnet address. And this time I want to select 1B and 10.1.2.0/24 and create. So, and the subnet is created, but there is only one routing table. So only one routing table, and if both subnets are using the same routing table, right? If like this, if I just go here like in subnet association, and if I associate both the subnets with the same routing table, so both subnets are what? Public subnets. Both subnets are public subnet, right? It's all about the routing, because two subnets, both subnets are associated with the same routing table. So just giving name like private and public is nothing like, right? Because both are what? Public subnet, because they both are using a public, like the same routing table, and this routing table has default route here to provide internet connectivity, right? This way. So what I need to do, I need to create another routing table, and then this private subnet need to be associated with the different routing table, and in that routing table, I will not create default route, right? So let me quickly create a new routing table so that you can understand properly. So I'm creating, and this routing table, VPC1 routing table, not this one. Now I'm going to change the name. This is for my public subnet routing table. Public subnet routing table. All right, and now I'm going to create another routing table, and name private subnet routing table. Says routing table 2, the same VPC, but I will associate private subnet with it. So routing table is created, but what about the route in this routing table? In this private subnet routing table, first, like I have to associate private subnet with it. So how to do that? Select your private subnet routing table, edit subnet association, and with subnet, I want to associate this one. Save, right? So now, if I go to, just let me refresh. Can we see that? Private subnet and subnet association. Yes, there is only one subnet associated. And what about public subnet? Only one route here. So far, we have accomplished so far. Let me quickly draw a small diagram here so that you can understand at least, like
for different routing tables.
Yes, Anjali, what do you ask?
So if we add a subnet to a new routing table, so that it's removed automatically from the
one exactly, because one subnet cannot be associated with more than one routing table. There is again 1:1 relationship. One subnet cannot be part of two routing tables, only one routing table. So automatically, yes, it is removed from one routing table. So far we have created a VPC, and the whole VPC is VPC name. We used here VPC1 and 10.1.0.0/16, and then we created one subnet here, and public subnet, and the subnet address is 10.1.1.0/24, and here another subnet, private subnet, and 10.1.2.0/24, and there is one internet gateway attached with this VPC as a whole, not with any subnet. It's a internet gateway, and we named like internet gateway for VPC1. Internet gateway is connected with the internet, and we don't have to do anything for that. It's by default, because internet gateway is a virtual instance, not a real router. And as such, we don't have control over like this internet gateway router. It's a default and virtual instance. So we cannot do a lot on this gateway. It's not like the Cisco or other routers. So we cannot do a lot of routing and all that. So here is my internet connectivity. And now there are two routing table, and this one, for this subnet, there is one routing table. For this subnet, there is another routing table, and that's what we did here. So we created one routing table here, and routing table as well. Let me put it this way, and another routing table here. So routing table one is for public subnet. So here, like one route by default, local, and another route we created. And here target is internet gateway for this VPC 1, right? And just we created another routing table 2 for private subnet. And if we check the routing table here, then we will find only one route local only, right? And already we have launched one EC2 in this public subnet here, a Windows machine. And I'm going to spin up another Windows machine here so that I can also show you like whether it is really private, completely private or not, this subnet. Because my objective is to configure this subnet 10.1.2.0 as a private subnet, and we are doing it in very customized manner. So so this machine already we have spinned up this EC2 Windows machine, and its private IP is 15, if you remember. And I'm going to launch another machine here, EC2, and IP address I'll be assigning here 2.15, right? 2.15. And obviously this 2.15, 10.1.2.15, then cannot be directly accessed from the internet side. And even like this 10.1.2.15 cannot like route traffic to the internet. Why? Because it's completely private. And why it is private? Because the routing table doesn't have any default route here. There is a route for major network. It means with this major network route, they can communicate with each other, obviously, if there is no restriction from the security group or access list. So they both can talk to each other with the private IPs this way, or maybe we can reach out to this Windows machine this way. From here, from my laptop, what I can do, I can launch RDP connection to this Windows machine, and then I can initiate another RDP connection to another Windows machine with this private IP address. So this can be another way. First, like connecting to this, and then this way. But again, it is a risky, can be risky if you don't do like a proper restriction. So again, can be risky because if any unknown user cannot somehow manage to reach to this your bastion host or this machine, like the jump box kind of thing, and then he can initiate again like a very same way connection to another machine. So definitely we will just later on like we'll be doing a lot of like firewalling here, like restricting traffic. Like we will control like the traffic movement between these two machines. Also, even the we can set like different conditions here, like from which IP the incoming connections would be allowed and to which port, or like maybe some other stuff there. But for now, like we want to like first accomplish this, like to make this subnet completely private. So for that, already I have created private subnet routing table. And if you look at the route, then it has only one route, and I'm not going to create another route here, right? No need to do that. Don't do this. Okay. So straight away, I'm going to immediately launch another EC2, but this time in private subnet, right? Private subnet. So yes, sure.
Yeah. So the first one, when you have that two routing tables in that diagram.
Let me open this. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is the right question, but then can
no issues. Go ahead.
So this routing table 2, can we have this default route in this particular routing table as well? And would that be okay? Like, I know it doesn't make any sense, but then maybe we have two routing tables, but they have the same default route, or maybe they can have a specific route to go to the internet gateway. So can that be done?
Yes. And but if we create exactly the same route here in this routing table, I mean, like not a specific route with any network address, any subnet mask, and pointing to the same internet gateway. So it means again, like this subnet, no more it is a private subnet. It has become now public subnet, right? Makes sense?
I understand that. Yeah. Okay. But then I was just asking, like, can that be done? That two routing table can have that.
Yes.
We can make specific routes, like not just.
Yes. Yes, yes. Let's say I don't want to create a default route. Let's say for only one destination, I want to send traffic to the internet gateway this way. So yes, that can also be done. I can put very specific route here. Let's say there is one network address 115.6.10.0/24. It's an internet IP. So yes, I can create a route here for this specific network and pointing to the internet gateway. Yes, that can also be done. So
Okay.
either way, like we will do that. So it's not like we cannot do like, yes, we can create different routes here.
Okay. And second, when you did the association to that second
Mhm.
subnet,
Mhm.
like into that
This subnet with this routing table, yes.
routing table, yeah,
Mhm.
through the GUI. So
Mhm.
at that particular time, it didn't like it just associated that subnet to the new routing table. So
Mhm.
like there was no warning or there was no notification that this subnet already exists in this another routing table. So like just in
Y-
production, it could be like a big problem if someone just associates a network into another routing table by mistake, maybe, and it
Mhm.
doesn't prompt anything. So, like, is this the default behavior, or we can
it-
add some?
this is the default behavior, and even like we cannot add any warning message onto there. But in case if like let's say you want to delete this routing table completely, then only like it gives error message that since this routing table has one subnet already associated, so please remove that association from the routing table, and then only you can delete the routing table. So at the time of deleting routing table, yes, we get an error message, but not at the time of associating or disassociating, in fact.
Associating subnet to
So
another
yes,
routing
so
table. Okay.
yes, like
We have
not
to be
like
very careful when we do that. Yeah.
exactly. And association means, let me add another point. Association means like we are telling this infrastructure that whenever any packet is coming from this subnet, then you have to check this routing table, because subnet is associated with this. So it's basically association is like, because it's all virtual, in fact. So there can be maybe 50 routing table, 10 routing table. So which routing table should be checked for which subnet? So that's what like association means here. Associating a subnet with the
Yeah, yeah.
routing table means we are telling like
That changes the whole picture, right? Because we made a public subnet into a private subnet by changing the routing table. So in production, if this happens by mistake by someone, so that could be a
yes,
problem.
it will
We have to
change a
be very,
lot.
yeah, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
all good.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks.
So yes, it is very crucial, and because like it's just one step, but of course a lot will get changed then, because
Thanks.
routing problem and all that.
All good.
So
Thanks.
So let me quickly, in the meantime, launch where is Windows Server free tier. So we are using a free machine. Obviously, we are not changing the type to save money. And this time I'm going to select VPC one. And this time I'm going to select this one, 10.1.2.0. And automatically a zone is selected from here, availability zone, right? There's no other way to select availability zone, only selecting subnet. And that is why even we have to be very careful at the time of creating subnets, because there we specify zone. And even if I just say like here, okay, assign public IP address to this instance, it doesn't make any sense, like it's useless, because no matter where public IP is assigned or not assigned, like instances launched in private subnet, right, cannot be accessed from internet side. So even if we assign or provides a public IP address to EC2 instance, still no internet, because just providing public IP address doesn't like mean that there is internet connection. No, it's all about the routing part, where there is route here in the routing table or not. So whether you are selecting enable or disable option here, not of any use, not of any importance here. So you can go with the default one, no problem.
So I've got a
Because
question. So
yes,
with this subnet 10.1.2.0, right?
yes,
Say you get 250 IP address, for example,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And 250 instances.
Okay.
If I fire up that instances in this private subnet,
Mm-hmm.
those instances, even though they get a public IP address,
Mm-hmm.
right, they won't be accessible from the internet. Is that right?
Correct. Correct, because if you spin up any instance in this private subnet, because private subnet is associated with this routing table, and the routing table doesn't have any default route. So yes, like no matter like whether there is public and private, both IPs are assigned to EC2, no internet accessibility at all, not in any direction.
Then is it not waste of that public IP address, because we are not
using
there's
that?
no use of public IP address,
of
right?
course, like
then
it's
why
very
is Amazon
unethical.
Still assigning those IP addresses?
Basically, it has, because IP address assignment has nothing to do with the subnet association and the routing table. So it's just a standard template. It's just the standard option what we are getting on this page. And maybe later on, let's say you want to associate subnet with different, or maybe yes, someone wants to say.
Jignesh, we can consider that way, like out of 250 workloads, let's say for example 2 workloads needs to pass some data to internet. Let's say they need a kind of Windows update or something from the internet. So then you assign those public IP addresses, and you create what Anjali mentioned, the specific routes, and allow that updates to come inside for those particular 2 servers. So in that case, those public IPs will be useful.
Can be, of course, this can be another use case, like as he mentioned that if in case like even the subnet is partially like semi public or semi private. Semi public or semi private means like for certain specific destination there is a route. Even the destinations are over the internet, but this routing table has route for those specific destination. And we want that like two-way internet connectivity, like connection coming from internet side, and as well as but only if like coming from like those specific IPs, because for return traffic there has to be specific route in the routing table. So maybe this can be another use case. And yes, like it's very much like a standard template at the time of spinning up any instance, and nothing to do with the routing table association and all that. So, because later on anytime like you can change, like let's say later on you realize that okay, I want to make this complete subnet as public subnet, like to both public subnet, right? So at least you don't have to spin up again instance or something. No, already they have public IPs, and simply just associating this private subnet with this routing table, and then delete this routing table, done. So maybe like you have like flexibility. I mean, like you can go in either way. But yes, like on this page there is no like integration, like this AWS cannot understand whether this subnet associated with the routing table has default route or not, or nothing. So it's not intelligent enough to understand anything, at least. And even if in case if as conduct mentioned that what if we want a specific route there in the routing table. So maybe 1 or 2 instances, like we want to assign public IP, maybe 1 or 2, like we don't want to assign public IP. So that way also. But anyway, in this case, I'm going to completely turn it off. And even like in case, I must add another point here. In case, even if you have not enabled this option, to assign public IP address on this space, later on you realize that IP address required here. So we can go with another option, that is elastic IP. We can attach a static public IP address. That is also like a good option, but not free to use. You will be charged for that, but as another option. And here, like I want to assign IP like 10.1.2.15. 10.1.2.15 is the IP, and again a tag here. I want to give a tag, and this one is again Win 2019, but this one is my private subnet, and the IP here is no 10.1.2.15. Okay, and then security group, again I want to not recommend it though, but I want to allow everything, or not from my IP address, anywhere. Review and launch, and then select key pair and go this way. So now you understand, like this EC2, another EC2, I mean like this private Windows server or server in the private subnet cannot be directly accessed from the internet side, but we can like initiate another RDP connection from this window to another like machine right? So this way we can access, and let this be launched properly. Then I'm going to show you. And can we also check the, even without doing that, we can also, where is VPC dashboard, and here we go. And here, like, we have option like to also check the reachability analyzer tool, a very good tool here. So we can also test the connectivity like between both the instances by using this tool, create a reachability analyzer. So we can use this tool, means like my objective is to check the reachability between these two EC2 instances. And also this way, can this EC2 reach to internet gateway? Obviously no way, right? Because like first packet will hit this RT2 routing table 2, and since there is no default route for internet gateway or any other like destination, so there is no way like to route packet to the internet gateway, because once it is routed, then of course your packet will get through, and will be routed to the internet. So we know like going to be unsuccessful if we try reachability from EC2, that is private subnet EC2, to the internet gateway. Obviously unsuccessful. What about reachability between these two EC2? Should be successful, because different subnets, part of same VPC, they do communicate with each other, right? But different subnets of different VPCs, maybe in the same region or different regions, they never communicate by default. They never communicate with each other. But since both subnets are in the same VPC, so obviously without doing any additional routing, they both should communicate. So what I'm expecting now, if I spin up another RDP connection from this window, this way, if I go here, from EC2 that is in the public subnet to EC2 in private subnet. So if I, and with the private IP, even private IP, right? I'm going to use private IP. Obviously, private IP is 10.1.2.15. So this connection should be successful. 10.1.2.15, and yes, and username, and let me get the password. So password here, password for this private connect, and then get password. Decrypt, and here is the password. Again, if I go to this machine, the password here. So this way, like EC2 in private subnet is accessible now. So let this be launched probably. Okay, so already one RDP session like to this public subnet EC2 with the public IP, and then another RDP to their private subnet EC2. Yes, it is now successful, and even we were expecting the same result, like the success. And but yes, like if I try to access internet from this machine, the machine in public subnet, right? I'm not going to use browser because it's just Internet Explorer, so you understand, like will take time. So, but I'm going to test with the DNS. So for that, I can launch NSLookup and see here NSLookup. If I immediately, like the DNS server pointing is 10.1.0.2. So, but I don't want to use this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change server first, 888, because I want to check the like this internet connectivity. So even if I say like, can you get me the IP address like of cisco.com, and yes, like cisco.com or gmail.com, it means internet connection is there, because DNS, I'm not using internal DNS, any internal DNS. is like public DNS server 888, and 888 is over the internet, and even I'm able to get IP address of different domain, right? IPv4 and IP version 6 address. What about another instance that is in the private subnet? This one, right? Window, inside window. If again I go to CMD here, and if I try to send any packet to any destination over the internet, so definitely will never be successful. And why never be successful? Because let me change the server first. I don't want to use internal. It's showing DNS.google. What about this? Cisco.com. So I'm not expecting proper output here. And yes, this request timed out. Even if I try to launch ping or anything, so like it's not, we are not getting any answer here, because EC2 is in the private subnet, no internet access, no outbound, no inbound, no outbound, no inbound. And even if I launch ping or anything, so obviously no way, like we cannot 888, no, it's not pinging. And what about another machine?
Has this instance got a public IP address 10.1.2.50?
No, but even if we
because
assign public IP
disabled.
address, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But even if we assign public IP address, it's still like the same result, right?
Yeah. But you can still RDP to this machine directly from your local
internet
desktop,
side,
right?
No. Even if we assign public IP to this machine 10.1.2.15, directly I cannot RDP to this machine. Why? Because 10.1.2 subnet is completely private subnet, because the routing table doesn't have any route. So even if we assign public IP address to the EC2 in private subnet, is still not of any use. Why there's no use of that public IP? Because even we cannot like establish RDP session to that EC2 with the public IP. IP is public, perfect, but there is no return path route, right? Return route. There is no return route, because this private subnet routing table doesn't have any default route. That is why. And even if time will permit me, then I will show you, or this is not possible even after signing public IP. Just give me a minute.
He has logged in from the public IP host. From there, he has done RDP at the moment.
Yeah, I know. What I was saying is, so when this VM was provisioned, right, the private IP one, I think we selected the option that auto assign public IP disable.
Yeah.
So if we enable that, then this instance will get something like 15.206. something, right?
Yeah.
It will get IP address, but because it is part of the private subnet, I can't RDP using that 15.206 IP address.
15.206 IP address, we will be able to with private IP, but not with the public IP. We will be still able to do RDP to 10.1.2.15 from that same 15.206.
No, from directly to that IP address.
Directly we won't be, because it doesn't have default route.
Correct.
Okay.
The same point, yes. All right. So now if I go to this machine, and this machine, like the main, public subnet computer, and if again I try to ping any destination over the internet, so yes, there is proper response. So EC2 in the public subnet has internet connectivity. EC2 in the private subnet doesn't have internet connectivity. It is verified now. And even if we go ahead and we assign public IP address to the EC2 in private subnet, it's still the same result. No internet connection, not from the machine to the internet, and not from internet side to the computer. So even we cannot RDP to this remote EC2 instance, which is even public IP address, right? Because there is no routing. There is no routing. That is why. And can we also do testing from here without actually doing this RDP and all that. So if I go here like reachability analyzer and create and analyze path, let's say it's a path analysis, just give any name, it's just a name. And the source type, if I select my EC2 and the source IP address, EC2 is in a public subnet, yes, from public subnet EC2 to this one private subnet. So source IP optional, but we understand source IP is 10.1.1.15 and destination IP 10.1.2.15. So internally we want to do the testing. Even destination port you can specify if you want, however it is optional. So in case if we are doing troubleshooting of security group and all that, then yes, we can specify that. So even like source and destination IP, if you want to do like analysis across different subnets, so no need to specify a specific IP address. But if there is proper ACL security group, then always recommend it. So it's taking time. It is still in the pending state. So we'll take a couple of minutes, not more than that. And very soon we are going to see the result here, analysis report. So let's see, still it is pending, refresh, and reachable. And first, like, of course, reachability status, reachable. So in good shape, succeeded, right? And can we get the detail? So and see here, view like the path here. So the first EC2 instance in public subnet, but with the private IP, obviously. Then ENI, network interface card, security group, then access list, routing, and then again security access list, security group, and then ENI, and then EC2. Perfect. What if I do this way, reachability analyzer, and let me delete this, not required. But I will not be charged for this. It's very much like a trace route kind of thing, like hop by hop. And if I select here, let's say network reachability analysis, or something, and the source type, if I select my instance in private subnet and private IP, I just leave this field blank. And the destination, for example, if I select just the internet gateway, so can this EC2 in private subnet like reach IGW? Obviously no. Okay, so it's asking about the destination and which internet gateway, VPC 1 internet gateway, create. So we are expecting an error message here, not reachable, unreachable something. So very good tool. In fact, you can do
like source as like internet, public internet, and destination as the private.
We can do that way also because we have multiple options. So yes, let this be successful or not successful. I mean, like status would be of course unreachable. So let's do a refresh. Yes. So status is unreachable. But why? What is the reason? So we also want to know the reason why unreachable, not reachable. And if further I go to this detail tab, so it is showing that something traffic cannot reach the internet through internet gateway because the source address is not paired with a public IP address. First, like reason it is showing like there is no public IP address. But the another reason here is cannot accept inbound traffic from the public internet. So what if we assign public IP address? Let me go that way also. Okay. So even the question that you asked, like what if we assign public IP address to the EC2 instance? So I'm going to do that now. So, but how will I do now? Because already instances are in running state. So I can go to Elastic IP. And here on this page, if I take one IP, public IP from AWS, public IP is assigned like 3.111.133.132. And now if I associate this IP with maybe the NIC card or this, since there is only one LAN card, one E and I, so I can safely select instance here. In case if like multiple interfaces, then another option like network interface need to be selected. So if I select this private and private IP, now there is a mapping here, like this public IP mapped with this private IP, but still there is routing problem, right? So now let's see the output now, what output we are going to get now. So IP is assigned now, public IP, this one, public IP, and assigned to this EC2, this EC2, automatically mapped, obviously. So assigned, but the issue is what? This routing table. So first, let me check from here, analyzer tool, and then we can again initiate RDP connection also. So if again I go to this analyzer and the same, maybe just create a new one. So
is it possible to use the previous test case, like
yes,
yeah,
I think
whatever you created
I
already.
I think yes. Analyze path, I think. No, not there. Let me see. Can we go this way? So I think the option is
There, analyze
there.
path on the top.
Where? Here, this
Yeah.
one. I think it is to create a new one.
Okay.
So is there
Actions?
any,
Actions?
maybe no, manage and delete. So we are looking here on this.
Maybe just a refresh. No.
Maybe.
On this, yeah.
Maybe let me check then the output, then might get the result. Yes, I think refresh will work. Yes, I think, but the error message, what error message we are going to get? So refresh and not reachable, obviously not reachable, but what information we have? Yes, like at least one information here we can get. A route table doesn't have an applicable route to internet gateway. Yes, so a refresh will work then because we have just refreshed. And here it's showing
the
like
output got changed.
exactly, output is now because different. Yes, and that's what I was expecting. I was expecting the same output because the problem is what with the routing table, no route to the destination. So there is no route table in this routing table. Routing table doesn't have route for internet gateway, and that is why like cannot be routed. So for ignore other like errors. Obviously, the first one is more relevant. No route to the destination. And even if I try to take RDP from here from my laptop with the same public IP address, so obviously public IP copy, and directly if I try to take, so should not be successful. So even though EC2 has public IP address, because it's not only about public IP address, it's all about the routing. So no, it's not getting through. So I hope you understand like private and public a bit. And just like I will take 10 more minutes just to complete this exercise. And last, like let's say now I want to like provide internet access to like private subnet, but only in one direction. Only in one direction means like not this way, but at least this way, outbound connection, not inbound. So for that, a NAT gateway is required, and NAT gateway need to be launched in the public subnet, and this NAT gateway definitely will have two IPs, one like public IP, another private IP, and this routing table then will have a route here, default route with a target NAT gateway. Target, not internet gateway. If I like use internet gateway as the target, so again there is no point of NAT gateway, then packet will straight away be routed to the internet gateway. So my objective is to send packet to the NAT gateway, and then from NAT gateway to internet gateway, and then internet. Another question is, if we are going to use NAT gateway, so still internet gateway is required or not? In this topology, yes, required. In this topology, internet gateway is still required because this NAT gateway will be using internet gateway for internet connectivity, right? So if I remove this internet gateway from the VPC, then even this NAT gateway cannot provide internet connectivity all alone. Internet gateway is still required. There are some scenarios wherein like with the NAT gateway only we can provide internet gateway. For example, if there are multiple VPCs and you don't want to attach one internet gateway with one VPC, your objective is something that there should be one VPC wherein like one public and one private subnet, and other VPCs should route traffic by using NAT gateway to this VPC. There are total 4 VPCs, and then this VPC, like the external VPC or public VPC with the public subnet should have only internet gateway to provide internet connectivity. It's like something like single exit point for internet.
So it's like creating your DMZ zone and those other VPCs like your internal zone or something like that.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes, but here in this, like in order to meet this, like I mean, like if we want this, that different VPCs first, they should like route traffic to a VPC that is that has like internet gateway attached and that has public subnet connected to public. It means single exit point. We want to route traffic in such a way that there should be a single exit point to the internet. They all should be using this VPC, a dedicated VPC, or maybe external VPC as the exit point. Yes, that can be possible, but again here NAT gateway is required and plus one more gateway, maybe transit or VPN gateway. So if I say internet gateway not required with NAT gateway, not 100% correct, right? There can be a scenario situation where in like internet gateway not required, with just NAT gateway we can provide internet connectivity, but then this NAT gateway should have been used in conjunction with either transit gateway, because different VPCs at first place they never communicate, right? So you understand the logic. If here like there is one VPC and there is another VPC and my objective is just route traffic of different VPCs to one VPC, the VPC that has internet gateway to provide internet connectivity. So at first place, there is no communication between different VPCs. So first we have to complete this. We have to accomplish inter-VPC communication. And for that, like a different gateway, like the transit gateway is required. So maybe I can, will be in a position to explain it in proper way in upcoming lectures, like in transit gateway. So just for now, you can ignore, skip this. So at least you can understand that along with the NAT gateway, internet gateway, at least in this scenario, yes, it is required. So both gateways, I mean like NAT and as well as internet. And it's very straightforward. Like if I just show you like how to provide internet connection to the EC2 in private subnet outbound direction. So only one step is required, 2 steps, not only one. First step is just look for the NAT gateway here. And where is the NAT gateway? So on the left hand side,
just saw it. There it is. There it is.
Here
on top
it is.
of peering connection.
Yes, got it. Okay. So just create a NAT gateway, and I can give a name like my NAT gateway, a NAT gateway, NAT G, and in which subnet? So public subnet. And here and tag, you see like tag is very important here. So I can easily identify my public subnet, public. And the scenario like I was discussing, like transit gateway and all that. So there, like we even use private NAT gateway also. I mean like doing internal NATing, not over the internet. But for this scenario, we need a public NAT gateway, right? And elastic IP is required here. So private, if there is no
private will be used for VPC to VPC.
VPC to VPC
within
exactly.
the same organization.
Exactly, by using this transit gateway, right? So yes, there we can use this private. Even technically we can use public internet NAT gateway also, but meaningless. Like I mean, like there's no point of doing that. So elastic IP required, no elastic IP, another IP. This IP, elastic IP or public IP, is associated with the NAT gateway, because NAT gateway would have both IPs, one private, one public. And done. Simple. Next. And the next step is creating a static route in private subnet routing table. Private subnet routing table, right? So I'm here on this page, private subnet routing table, routes, edit, add, and default route, and here NAT gateway, right? Not internet gateway here. Save. So what I did, I created a route here, default route, and the route is like any other network address. Please route traffic to NAT gateway. And where is NAT gateway? Here. Here there is NAT gateway. So now like packet will first hit the routing table and then the NAT gateway and then going this way. And NAT gateway will do the translation. Private IP will be translated with the NAT gateway external interface IP. And this NAT gateway provides 55,000 concurrent translation. So there can be 55,000 entries in the NAT table, 55,000. So it's a good number because it's doing something like source IP and source port translation. So can we do verification now? So I'm back to this and what I was trying to do. So now we are expecting a proper response, right? So just do that. Launch ping again one more time. And if everything is in good place, so this machine should have now internet reachability, at least outbound direction, but still I'm not seeing any response. And now here we go. So it took time, right? And sometimes what happens, like whenever you are doing your lab, so like ping, like sometime it get freezed. So you should always stop ping and then again start doing ping again. I mean, like sometimes I've seen like it's continuous RTO and then stop and start again. So you will get and then see it. But now, can we access this machine with the public IP? Now, no, it's still not possible, right? Because internet is only in one direction. It's just source NAT, secure NAT. It's not bidirectional. It's not a static NAT. So NAT gateway is doing NATing, but source NAT, many to one translation, secure NAT, not static or like bidirectional NAT. So no, like cannot be accessed, but now this machine has internet connection.
So it's only outbound connection, but is it possible to accept inbound connection as well, or not possible?
No, not possible. With NAT gateway, no, not possible. Because on NAT gateway, we cannot do any further customization. So the only way is just moving this subnet like to associating this subnet with another routing table, wherein like there is internet gateway route or something. So only one way internet.
This is something like proxy, forward proxy.
Kind of thing, yes.
Yeah,
you can
So
assume
this
like
is one of the application which you mentioned in the first class, that there are certain firewall use cases or applications which are divided into separate AWS services. So this is one of the service like NAT gateway translating it.
exactly. NAT gateway is one of the service, obviously, and but it's not free to use. And NAT gateway is charged hourly basis plus on the basis of number of translation it is doing. How many translations are current entries are there in the routing table? So you will be billed based on like number of hours and number of translations. So it is not free service. In fact, NAT gateway service, it is a paid service. And that is why in a large enterprise network, to minimize not exactly VPN gateways might be this NAT gateway is required, but we can minimize number of NAT gateway, internet gateways with the help of transit gateway. I'll explain that scenario. So in case if you have like 10, 20 like VPCs and you want like at least in one direction internet connectivity. So not necessarily that you should have one NAT gateway in one VPC. No, I will explain like another scenario wherein like with single NAT gateway even we can provide internet connectivity to different VPCs. Right. So this way we can minimize our like running cost, in fact, billing, because if there are 10 VPCs and we are going to spin up 10 NAT gateway, so it will cost us more But if somehow if we can manage like we can minimize or bring like down this number of VPCs, NAT gateways from 10 to 1 or maybe 2, so definitely will reduce your billing amount per month or monthly basis. And I'll explain, like I will like take one example to explain this further, but just coming to this point, before, like I need to complete transit gateway, because without understanding transit gateway, we cannot understand like this single exit point or of a single NAT gateway, like providing internet, like cannot be possible. So obviously, like first step is understanding transit gateway. So maybe after 1 or 2 session, I will be talking about transit gateway, peering and all that. So any further like question or any doubt based on today discussion? So I will take your question, your queries, because objective we have completed. The objective was like just to creating a VPC with 2 subnets, internet gateway, routing part. So almost we have completed. Like today, like we have achieved like the objective. And now once you have also like you are doing your lab practice, so once done, then don't forget to terminate both the instances, right? So don't let them be running, because will unnecessary will be added to your account. Even if your free account, then again your number of hours will get reduced, so don't let them be running. And also get rid of like your other objects. And the easy method is like deleting VPC. So if you delete VPC, so what happened, like subnets and your access list and security group, they all like get deleted, provided like there should not be any dependency. There should not be any dependency, because if I try to delete this VPC1 directly from here, let's say, and if there is any EC2 instance or something else, then and see here, it is showing like the VPC contains 1 or more instance. And what is that? Both instances like shutting down, and the word network interface card like is still like not properly shut down. That is why NAT gateway is also there. So you need to delete NAT gateway, and you will have to wait for these 2 machines to be completely shut down or terminated. Then only we can delete the VPC. And deleting VPC means like you have deleted all associated and R2 created objects, like the security group, access list, maybe subnets also. So easiest method is deleting VPC.
Is there a dashboard that can show all the objects running under our account?
Yes, like we have 2 separate dashboard. One is EC2 dashboard. So here you can see like complete stats on this page. And for VPC also we have VPC dashboard, and even they have added a very good feature, EC2 global view, because global view means like even if you have EC2 instances in different regions, so you will have like complete view on this page only. In 6 or 7 years months back, I think global view was launched somewhere around 2021. But prior to that, in fact, a big issue, like because if we have spanned like EC2 instances across different regions, so at that time, like no way like to just have a global view of number of EC2 instances running. The only way was just like selecting regions manually and then checking like EC2 instances manually. But now they have added a good feature here, tab, in fact, EC2 global view, to provide a global view. So if you click here, global view, so we'll show a global view on this page.
But
so yes, like
this will only show still EC2 instances, right?
EC2,
like what
exactly.
If I want to see
for VPC, no, like there's
EBS, S3, internet gateway,
basically
all
internet
that stuff
gateway
on the
and other stuff are part of like VPC. And let's see what we see here on this page. So different reasons, and it shows in even like VPC, subnet, security group, and volume. So at least important objects are shown here, so we can see this way. But most of the objects are default. So you can see like 1 VPC, 3 subnet almost in each region. But if you look at the US East, So in US East, there is one VPC and there are 6 subnets because there are 6 availability zones in US East. So they all are default, in fact. So yes, like useful, but still like sometime we need to check that properly. I mean, like in just changing the region from Mumbai to another region and then analyzing like what all resources you have. Or in production network, even you can automate the whole process with the help of scripting. I mean, like if you want like your EC2 should be automatically shut down by 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. So yes, that is possible, because cloud computing is not only about virtualization, even it is all about automation also. So we can write down a small script to automate the entire process. I mean, like starting and stopping your EC2 instances. So that's another way, like you can go that way also. Different options we have. So let me stop